The Yellow Brick Road. This video does not reflect the actual views of real people. These are actors playing a role to entertain audiences. No persons or animals were harmed in the making of this video. Gosh, I love YouTube and I love Google.
Welcome to Yellow Brick Road. I'm Jordan. This is James. And, it's time to study God. So, we're basically going to listen to Ben Shapiro and Jordan Peterson and Dave Rubin talk about God and religion and stuff like that, which is always interesting. The topic, that is. These guys are probably interesting, too. I keep forgetting the camera's here. I'm just staring at my face talking.
You had a top half, just go. Yeah.
So here we go. Jordan Peterson, or Jordan B. Peterson, Ben Shapiro, Dave Rubin on God, Christianity, and Judaism. Yeah.
Yeehaw.
We're open for debate.
Yeehaw.
We're going to do our best to translate and correct them. Yes, I said correct. Not like, not offer an opinion. I mean, actually, literally correct them.
Oh. I mean, hey. It's not like it's the Wild West. It's called foreshadowing.
California.
It's like, no. This is the violin. Use this instead.
Oh, I forgot about that shit.
I know.
Maybe we'll bring that up.
That's why I said it.
We might bring that up at the end. All right. Here we go.
Howdy.
Boys like cowboys. Yeah.
I think a
I don't want my
certain set
son
of
being
people
a
are listening
fairy.
to both of you and going, all right, these two guys think that some guy is talking to them from the sky. I mean, I know this is the most, I know why you don't love this question because it's so ridiculously oversimplified. But how do you get to those people then? For the people that think, well, wait a minute, what are you talking about? Shapiro loves...
I don't even know if she heard me. Hi, Tanya.
It's facts over feelings, but he's talking about this imaginary sky guy that wrote this book and blah, blah, blah. What do you think is there a psychological trick to sort of get people over that hump if you wanted them to start exploring some of this? Well, you know what I mean? We can do the high level stuff for hours and hours, but eventually it just keeps getting to a sort of smaller and smaller place that people can get to.
All right, so that's so hard a question, and so I'll try to address it this way. So there's a line in the New Testament where Christ says that no one comes to the Father except through Him, which is a hell of a thing for anyone to say. I mean, there's a lot of statements in the New Testament that are strikingly strange in that manner. I am the way and the truth and the life. That's another one. It's associated with the same idea.
Yeah. And we'll get to some of the New Testament.
Okay. So here's the idea, and it.
Go ahead and read it before we get to the Peterson's point of view on this. He does a good, I just want to say, he does a better job as far as, it's like, if someone asks you, well, what do you think God is? It's like, that could be a hefty, shitload of word answer.
Sure, but I like to start off with all it's me.
Free smoke, if anyone challenges that.
Jordan Peterson is not a Christian, but a perennialist, and defines God within his context. I'm pretty sure I just heard him say that he's God. And he's the shit. I'm just kidding. No.
I don't know what perennialist means, but I think I might know what it means. Like something you can observe over a long period of time.
Yeah.
He says this continuous factor. I'm even using his fucking hand gestures.
Yeah.
This continuous factor going across a long period of time. That's where you can see God.
Forgot this.
Rip it. Yeah.
Wow. Jesus also says in John chapter 10, verse 30, I and the Father are one. It's talking about me.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff. I might even bring up some quotes as we get into this. All right, let's hear Jordan Peterson's explanation or description. Fuck.
Bears on your question, although I don't exactly know how. It's as if there's a spirit at the bottom of things that is involved in the bringing to being of everything. So for example, people talk about evolution as a random process, but that's not true. It's not true. The mutations are random, but there's also a lot of other sources of genetic variation. But the selection mechanisms are not random. So now then the question is, what are the selection mechanisms? So I'm going to have to go a bunch of places to answer this question.
Just remember that he said the mutations are random, because he's going to say something later on, I believe, that might contradict that statement.
Mm-hmm.
Well, here's one selection mechanism. Yeah. It's like, so human females are very sexually selective. That's why you have twice as many female ancestors as male ancestors. So the male failure rate for reproduction is twice that of the females. Oh. Okay, so the question is, well, how is it that males succeed differentially? And the first answer is, well, females reject. Human females reject. But then the question might be, well, they reject on the basis of what? And the answer is, well, it's something like competence. And then the question is, well, how is competence defined? And then the answer to that is, well, men put themselves in hierarchies and they vote on each other's competence. And it's really counterintuitive in some sense from an evolutionary perspective, because you'd have to ask yourself, why would men put themselves in positions where they elevate some men in status and then give them a huge reproductive advantage, given that that's to their reproductive disadvantage in some sense? Okay, and there are reasons. Part of that might be, well, let's say you decide to follow the best leader in a battle. Well, then you don't die. Like, he might get all the women, but you don't die, so at least you're still in the game. Yeah. And it might be the same if you're following the greatest hunter. And the greatest hunter wouldn't be the person who is best at bringing down the game. It would be the person who is best at bringing down the game and sharing it and organizing the next hunt and all of that, right? And so men will organize themselves into groups and privilege certain men, and that puts them ahead in the reproductive hierarchy. And so what that means to some degree...
That's not exactly a truth. That's a trend, I would say. History has trended that way. What?
I'm sure he casts spells and shit, you know? Yeah.
Real quick, the perennial is a perspective in modern spirituality that views each of the world's religious traditions as sharing a single metaphysical truth or origin from which all esoteric and exoteric knowledge and doctrine has grown. Well, I would agree with that then. Mm-hmm. I would definitely agree with that. I just never heard that term of philosophy before. But as far as my observations go, I can basically, well, I wouldn't say that they all do that. I would say all of life period has that essential thing that Peterson, I believe, will get into. All right.
Agree is that there's a spirit of masculinity that's shaping the entire structure of human evolutionary history. That's what that means. And then I think, okay, well, that might just be a biological epiphenomenon. And so it would be a spirit it's the spirit of positive masculinity that manifests itself across epochal ages, millions of years perhaps. And it actually has shaped our consciousness, actually. And so
I hope when he says masculine, he doesn't mean male, as in as a penis.
For example.
Yeah.
SummerSlam. The belt, SummerSlam.
Yeah.
Yeah. Vader. It's going down.
So, well, I would look at it, because he's speaking of hierarchies, the movement of building a hierarchy and creating order of things, yes, is a masculine movement. but the content it uses derives from a feminine existing. That's how I would say it. But I'm speaking in more philosophically than biological. I hope he's not going towards biology with that. There are reflections, but they're not specifically, I have a penis or I have a vagina, right? Male and female both express masculine and feminine. In fact, they're happening simultaneously. They're always connected to each other. Yeah. All right. Masculinity is not male. All right.
Yeah.
You probably have a better understanding of Peterson's work than I do.
Yin and yang. Yes. Yes.
Beliefs have been structured according to the patriarchal molding of the religious dogmas and constructs. A lot of people's beliefs have definitely been shaped by
I'm positive that's
religion.
That's happened. That's why it's like funny how there's major contradictions within a lot of these texts.
Yeah.
Or when someone cites these things.
Yeah.
It's like it talks about love and all these things, and there's a lot of things that showed me that there must be a lot of wisdom here. A lot of analogies, metaphors, etc. But then there's something contradicting like this. I'm not quoting it, but it's like, love thy neighbor. If he's gay, kill him. It's like, huh?
That's what you call a malignant masculine.
Yeah.
Like trying to egotistically control or create order rather than a full spectrum masculine. I would call the prime masculine or something like that.
Yeah.
I think Sarah was like imperial something.
The imperial self.
Yeah. Kafi or Keife?
You can call him K.
K. Let me know if I get your name right or wrong. These are qualities, masculine and feminine. Yeah, I would say so. Our egos create conflict, right? Create separation so we can observe them individually and do studies of them and shit. All right, continue.
So you can think about that as a figure, and it would be the figure that emerges. It's like the essential spirit of all the great men who defined what greatness constituted. That's a spirit. Okay, now that's a purely biological explanation. You could say, well, that's God for all intents and purposes. You might have an image of that built right into you. Even the sense that you can experience something divine and paternal might be merely a reflection of that evolutionary process. So that would be a biologically reductive argument for the existence of what we experience as God. But then there's another possibility too, which is that that's actually reflective of a deeper metaphysical reality that has to do with the nature of consciousness itself. And I would say that I think that's true. Is I believe the biological case, and I believe the biologically reductive case, but I don't think that exhausts it. I think that there's a metaphysical layer underneath that the biology is a genuine reflection of. And that's the sort of the macrocosm above and the microcosm below. That we are really reflective, including in our consciousness, of something about the structure of reality itself. And that might involve whatever it is that God is.
Well, so that's why...
Let me stop him here because...
He doesn't know his role yet.
K may mean not male and female by masculine and feminine. What does Peterson? Because he does a lot of studying of behavioral things.
Yeah.
Considering, like, this is why men do this and
so
women do that.
Yeah.
Like, he was literally just talking about as far as women selecting a mate or whatever. So, when he says the internal as or that metaphysical area that's reflecting in our biology, he might be going towards that area, which I think is a bad idea. That could lead to bad things.
Well, for one, as far as the behavioral biology thing, it's kind of disregarding what identity is.
Yeah.
So it's kind of weird how it's like he'll say one thing, but then that itself will contradict everything he said prior.
Yeah.
Which is why it's like if you built like a foundation upon that, then what the fuck, dude? You know?
Well, I look at it like, well, okay, if you start doing that with male and female, then it's going to break off into other areas.
Yeah, I know. It will eventually lead to other groups. You know, biologically behavioral groups for Irish people. It's
You said something about like eye color, like blue eyes over here, brown eyes.
I told
green
you.
eyes, hazel.
Eventually, whoever thinks that it's gonna like white people over here, black people over here. It's gonna keep going. It's gonna become all right. All full Irish people, you need to live over here. 100% Irish. All you halfies, like moi, like you have to go over here. You know.
And the only way that could stick for at least a time period, it wouldn't stick forever because truth will find its way out.
Oh.
But for a time period, if you use that that scenario, but your basis for it is a underlying metaphysical truth, that's when things get weird. Now there's a demand of considering a person a certain way because of that metaphysical underpinning, as he calls it.
Yeah.
Like now you have a spiritual characteristic because you have brown eyes.
Yeah. It's completely disregarding.
Or you have a vagina.
Yeah, completely disregarding someone as an individual.
And yeah.
And how conditioning affects people.
And I think the world subconsciously is fighting back against that. On a subconscious level, I think people fight back against that, which is why you have men recognizing as women, women recognizing as men, white recognizing as black, black recognizing as white or Latino or whatever.
Yeah.
I think it's a subconscious fight against that because, well, we know that for us, as far as metaphysically, we know it's not male and female based.
I'm just jealous.
Yeah.
Of pigments, you know.
Yeah.
Matt Hunter. Rubin and Shapiro like, my God, shut the fuck up. I don't know. I guess. I don't know.
About Peterson? They're all friends, I think. So
I don't know. I don't know about that.
I think a lot of these ideas go right over their fucking heads.
Case said, I don't think Jordan thinks of it as so black and white. He understands the complexity surrounding these topics. The perennial philosophy does emphasize a metaphysical foundation underlying the structure of consciousness itself.
Yeah. Does he state that he's a perennial philosopher?
I don't know.
Or
Tanya.
into that specific thing?
God is all, everything, all at once. The energy is masculine and feminine all at once.
Yeah.
It's not that complicated. It can be a field condition.
Okay, I think he's leaning towards that, but he ultimately doesn't know. I think he'll say that later in this, that he, like, I don't really know.
Yeah.
Like this is something I'm trying to understand,
That's
trying
cool.
to discover, which is cool. But I think he also is leaning towards that as the answer, or as part of it. Now, if he said what he said as individuals rather than in groups, then I'd be like, yes, I'm with you.
Oh, sure.
As in, a person's metaphysical nature starts reflecting in their biology, and obviously it reflects in behavior. That one's just obvious to everyone. Yeah, I agree with Tanya.
Yep.
100%. I agree with Tanya. This God can be directly perceived in what neuroscientists today are calling a complete mystical experience. I don't know.
It's a little tough to, I would say, as far as like you know, like I said, like, doctor, I feel the sweat. I can't put words in it. Well, through this physical and these X-rays, MRIs, it seems to me that you take these pills. Take these. That'll fix it. It's like, see how there's a lack of answer on one side.
Yeah.
Matt Hunter. So have I, but I suspect Jordan Peterson hasn't. My bad. Okay. Matt Hunter. Peterson is making about $1020.
60,000.
$60,000 per month via Patreon. God is on his side. Maybe. And a website link from Kay.
Alright, let's continue. This is where Rubin and Shapiro step in, I believe.
They step in with their cold scowl and
I think this is so interesting because what you're doing there, especially at the end, is you're giving it a little room to say, I don't know, right?
Well, you have to.
Yeah.
Well, alright, you have to, but I think that's the answer audiences want to hear as well. They don't want to hear a guy say, I have the answers. I'll do it, though.
It's basically the answers for regarding something that's
woo-woo. If it's something woo-woo, like supernatural or whatever, people don't want to hear a direct answer. Alright, let's get back to this.
But I think that's what people don't want to grant you.
Well, this is why I don't like the question. Do you believe in God?
Right.
It's like, well, that's like, it's to me that question is always like, well, what makes you so sure that you know that God exists?
Right.
And it's like, well, I'm not sure. I'm not willing to claim that certainty, you know. But I laid out the argument. I don't know what you think.
So what do you think about when he takes it all the way to that end, and then there's that little space at the end?
I mean, again, I don't think that that's severely problematic in terms of just general religious thought. I mean, the general religious thought going back thousands of years, and this is why when you look at Aquinas' proofs of God, what he comes to is he says basically what you say, which is if you go down deep enough, then you get to something. And that something is what we call God. So he doesn't say God, the Bible starts from the premise God exists and he created the universe. Aquinas starts from, we have a universe, what says God is there? And he says, well, when you go all the way down deep enough, there has to be a force that lies behind the combined logic of the universe, and that thing is what we call God.
Okay, so Shapiro's talking about something less talking about the individual and more talking about just the universe itself.
That statement itself is like, oh, that is the individual.
In a way.
So back down.
But I think he's talking about it as in...
God created the universe. It has to be individual for God to be there as far as the individual is concerned, and the universe is created. Yes.
I think he means if you break down as far as the laws of reality that we consider reality and all that, you go down deep, like, what's the cause of this? There's God sitting there. I think Peterson's talking more of a human experience, more about human experience. He's talking about, like, the whole thing, I think.
Right, and so he's trying to reason his way back to first principles. And I think that the case for God, not in the way that we think of him as like a jolly bearded guy in the sky who like takes care of all of our problems or anything, but the idea that there is a logos, right? There's a structure, a fundamental structure to the way life is, and there is a reason and a fundamental purpose to why life is. And what lies below that, you can call God. And that
consciousness has some association with it.
Well, your consciousness reflects God. Again, this is one of the fundamental. This is sort of Leibniz's proof of God, is that the principle of sufficient reason, the idea that you are capable of understanding the universe. If you actually believe you're capable of understanding the universe in any way, then your mind has to, if you believe in objective reality, as Sam does, and you believe that your mind is capable of grasping an objective reality, not an evolutionarily beneficial reality, but an objective reality. Your mind is reflecting a greater mind, right? Your mind is reflecting a greater logic. Well, what stands behind that greater logic? It must be something, right? And so this is the idea that there is a God that stands behind that. So the proof for God...
So, yeah, like I was saying, right, you have... Ben's talking about everything. And Peterson's trying to think more of a personal level, which is why... he sort of interrupts him and says, like consciousness, like something like that, right? Obviously, rocks aren't conscious, but I think Ben thinks like God has a plan for this rock here.
I don't know.
You're right.
Can you imagine, like just Jordan at 12 years old? Hey, these rocks! They're just screaming. We don't hear them.
I think they do, but in a different way.
Maybe
they have rock consciousness.
Rock consciousness.
I just rock.
No, it's just pick them up. It's like. It's just rock flies in here.
Yeah. You want to read those? Kay says, mystical states of consciousness are not misty or vague. they're quite correctly defined, concretely defined within the scientific literature. And he put a link down, which I will get to. I'll remember that. Tiny says, I teach others how to understand their mystical experiences. Is it consciousness or ability to shift through the vibrations as you expand? I would say it's... Well, it depends on how we define consciousness, right? Because that's, if we just say consciousness as in being aware, that's not really the whole self, is it? Because there's a subconscious. Things we're not consciously aware of.
It's only part.
Within our psyches.
Partial, yeah.
So, yeah, I would define consciousness as, if you want to go black and white with it, consciousness is more of the masculine, subconscious the feminine. Constantly interacting, but you can see one but not the other.
Yeah, so it's kind of like, not yet. I'm not going to say that yet. All right.
Yeah. Continuing.
Wait, if you're asking the question, you don't know the answer. But you might have had to say, I don't know.
Yeah.
So you're on your way.
I think, honestly, is not supremely difficult. And I think that we all do have, whether it's biologically sourced or, in my view, logically sourced, a belief that there is a structure to the universe, a predictable structure to the universe that didn't emerge out of simple randomness, and there's a reason that things are the way that they are. And that from that we can draw the fact that we are capable of acting within that logical universe. If everything were sheer chaos, you could not act. You'd be paralyzed by the chaos that surrounds you.
But what does he mean by logically sourced or biologically sourced? Does he mean the idea of God being logically sourced? Or coming from logic? Or does he mean actual God?
I'm really trying
from logic
to hear him say it, so it's tough to, as far as when he won't go into depth on it. It's like logically sourced. What do you mean, like statistics? Isn't that like who this guy is? So.
I would take logic and call it relative, which it is.
Yeah. Logic
is relative.
Yeah.
Thus, it's based on personal experience.
Sure.
Straight up.
Yeah.
So would you both argue then that at a micro level and at the individual level, you could live a perfectly good, decent life with whatever moral subset you create yourself, but I think ultimately you're both making the argument that at a macro level, a society just can't
You can't function without the mythos. No, you're embedded in that. And so, and I was talking about this Christian idea too. So I've been thinking about...
Really quick. This society can't function without the mythos.
I thought I was about to find out what they meant.
And he means like the principles or something like that.
Oh.
Or myths themselves.
No.
Once again, I would just go back to just experience.
Sure.
But, all right.
That statement about no one comes to the Father except through me. I thought, okay, well, what does that mean exactly? And I've worked a lot of this out over these lectures that you and I have been participating in. Well, so there is this notion, and that Haidt and Lukyanov are also pursuing in The Coddling of the American Mind, that one of the ways that you ennoble people and encourage them is by having them confront things that are frightening to them, that are beyond them. So what you really want to do is you want to optimally challenge people. And what that does is make them braver and stronger, not less afraid. It makes them more courageous and more competent. Okay, and I would say the clinical evidence for that is overwhelming. If you poll 100 educated clinicians and you say to them, well, is there utility in having people get their ethical story straight and face the things that they're avoiding? They're all going to say yes, those are fundamentally curative.
And this is quite literally what we're doing the reverse of at college.
Yes, exactly. It's quite literally the reverse of that. Yeah. Okay, so now...
So ethical stories and confronting something about themselves. Yeah, sure. I don't know what the ethical stories part. You're supposed to be creating their ethical story. But he might mean that too. Who knows?
Maybe it's just somebody writing them down. It's like, see, they're right here. For you all to see. versus like rather than experiencing one as a story.
Yeah.
Like these are my personal experiences. Da, 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 you know.
Let's hear them further on. Let's hear.
Here's the idea. Here's the idea. So imagine that you are in some sense the embodiment of that paternal spirit that has characterized mankind since the dawn of time. It's locked in you. It's part of your potential. And maybe that's coded at least in part biologically, but it's also coded sociologically. It's in the air, so to speak, around you, in the mythos and in the stories we tell each other. Okay, so now what you decide to do, and this is where I think we could have an interesting conversation about the relationship between Judaism and Christianity. So there's an idea in Christianity, which is I think the central idea, which is that you need to face the potential for malevolence that exists within you and in the world. So that's Christ's confrontation with the devil in the desert, with Satan in the desert. You have to come to terms with that malevolence. That's part of existence. And you have to voluntarily accept the burden of suffering. And so that's the acceptance of the cross. Okay, so you take on that. You say the suffering. So there's an idea that Christ is a messianic figure because he took the suffering of the world onto himself. And what that means to me is that he was someone, speaking conceptually, who decided that the suffering of the world was his responsibility. And that that's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to decide that that's your responsibility. You take that on as a burden. You do the same with the malevolence. So when you read history as a perpetrator, right? Maybe you also read it as a victim, but you certainly read it as a perpetrator. And then that's on you. Mm-hmm. Okay, so then the question is, what happens when you do that? And I would say the answer is two things. Is that, first of all, it starts to force you to develop, like to learn what you need to learn in the world, and to absorb the information that would enable you to start to face the suffering and to rectify it. So that forces you to become a more competent person, and that's the socialization part that you thought of as so important. But then there's a secondary thing that happens too, which is that taking on that additional stress and demand voluntarily transforms you biologically, because within your genetic structure, let's say, there's all sorts of potential. But that won't be unlocked unless you place yourself in a position where the demands necessitate it. And so by following that pathway, truth, let's say, the acceptance of suffering and the confrontation with malevolence, so that's the heaviest load that you could take on, then you actually produce a psychophysiological / spiritual transformation in yourself that matures you into like the representation of the Father on earth. That's why that's how that lays itself
okay, so I'm glad.
That's a very interesting chunk there.
To be quite honest, like halfway through what he's saying, I went in my own little thing. I was just like,
Oh, it's, in my opinion, how the Jesus story should be read. He explained it very well, the way I think.
I went off of that. I'm like, Jesus is a champion, and da 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 da.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So well done on Peterson's part. I had a thought. It might be gone.
We both know because you're picky. You can't have thoughts. It says so here in these studies, right here. Yeah. Unless it involves your five senses, it doesn't mean shit.
Yeah. Obviously, Peterson's narrowing things down because, it's to make a study of it, right? If someone asks you, who are you? It has to be a long-winded answer so that there's some sort of education going on, rather than, I am me. If that's your only answer, it's like you're not going to get anywhere.
Yeah.
So that's why, all right, let's talk about his pillars here. Right? Truth, willing to take on suffering, and the battle against evil, basically. Fighting something malevolent. Yeah. Basically evil. What are you doing?
I felt something right there. I'm like,
it's your face. It's your upper lip.
I'm shaving this shit off my face. Like, I can't stand it.
It's like flickering up in your nose.
Yeah.
Mine does that. But, yeah.
All right, shitty razor, man.
So should those be, let's say you're just starting out on a metaphysical journey to understand something in the world.
Yeah.
truth, or you're trying to develop as a person. Truth, dealing with suffering, or confronting suffering, and confronting malevolent. I can't even say that. Evil. Let's say evil.
Empty.
And that's not bad.
Yeah, I don't have any. I got any beef with it.
I think all those are required in order to start creating. Well, I think creating is you might even want to add that in there, right?
Well, it's already happening.
Because loving a song is also a teammate of those things, right?
Well, it's saying it without saying it.
Because
in an okay way, I would say, because if you're on that path, then it's already creation's already taking place. Yeah.
Yeah, but there's also conscious creation.
Well, it's just in general.
Right. See, the quiet thing that's creating that I think you're talking about is, in my opinion, already there.
Well, it's on both ends.
I would say it's already there.
Think of it like the space for your temple is already there. The materials.
I would say it's already built. Already built, chilling there, and you're plucking away the pieces that aren't it.
So there's a sense of building that needs to take place, but
that is the building part. That's your masculine expression. It's the building of the pyramid. The feminine expression is the pyramid's already there. It's just you can't see it. So as you're going inward, you're also going up. Does that make sense? You're going up the hierarchy as you're observing each level.
Okay.
Just look at it like an upside down pyramid with a standing up pyramid.
Just hope if this was on TV, you'd be censored for that.
Just remember, like, one end is below water.
One level's below. You can't say that. Right under Jordan Peterson, a clear-cut case of the emperor new clothes. How long until some kid points and says, "But he's naked"?
Not for a while, because they have to understand what he's talking about first.
Tanya said, "Shadow."
I think he'll do it to himself as well.
Love the darkness as much as your light, and you see all.
Yeah.
That's why races should come together.
That's the above and below type thing, right?
And they're having a personal conversation. All right, personally.
Continuing.
And I'm glad he got us here, because the question that I said to you, there was only one thing I said to you guys before we started, that I wanted to get to something about most of the lectures that when we're doing these things, you're usually talking about the Old Testament. Now, obviously, you're an Old Testament guy. But my question was, do you think that Ben, or just people that believe in the Old Testament exclusively, are missing something? So you just laid out a case of something that potentially is missing there. Do you think that is a fair argument?
Well, what I'm going to argue is that what you just said is fundamentally unchristian, in the sense that you're saying that everyone is supposed to imitate Jesus, and the basic conceit of, from what I understand, speaking with Christian theologians, is that we are fundamentally incapable of taking on our own sin, and so we have to have somebody who comes in the form of Christ on earth in order to accept that suffering for us, and that is the purpose of God actually embodying himself in Christ, is to provide human beings the capacity to withdraw from original sin, that we don't actually have the capacity beyond a certain point to overcome, and that's why Jesus as a singular figure is necessary. I actually agree from a...
No, I do not agree with the whole, the one that is greater than all of us. No. I think that's within. That's within everybody, everything. I never liked and I have a theory that might have been like put there by specific amounts, by specific people for, most likely for shitty intentions, for people to believe no, we're not worthy. It's some greater presence than us. You know, it's like, no, it's just, I think it's you projecting this greater version of yourself. You know, you need to realize that it isn't.
Well, there's lying, then there's lying by omission, right?
Yeah.
Let's leave certain works out of the Bible so that the rest of this doesn't make any sense. Or it's could be narrowed down to just, this is just a strict principle rather than
The Syrian said what? The Christ is what?
like a title.
Yeah, but
What? I don't remember.
like basically meaning like is within everyone.
Yeah.
So it's basically oh, I am not worthy. It's like no, you are. Stop it.
Yeah.
Stop. If we all realize that, if I say I'm God and someone gets pissed, and I say no, well you are too. We all are. Don't you see? Your own universe and the universe that binds us all. Like, see here? No. It's this weird belief that
I don't quite go there. Because
I
it's too
would-
humanized. It's too exclusive to humans. It's got to expand
said
further than that to
all.
call it God.
I said all.
So then, like a chair too.
Yes.
All right.
It'd have to be.
All right. I'm just saying.
It'd be like too segregated. It's like a little weird. It's like, what's the word? Not entitlement, but we're superior to you, you kangaroo. And the kangaroo's like, oh. Like, no, man. So I said everything and everyone and.
Oh, what he says, Shapiro is saying is basically like
It's a fundamentalist.
sounds fundamentalist,
Yeah.
evangelical.
Like
type
we
Christian.
need. See, like it's like this. Like someone say, well, see, we couldn't get to heaven, but with Jesus, He formed the bridge, so we could get.
Yeah.
It's like no, it's there, it's there.
Yeah.
It's just, I believe it's these misreadings, misinterpretations of whatever texts that really prevents people from really. Well, not doesn't prevent them. It's like a roadblock in the way of like, do you see what these readings offer you?
Yeah.
See what they can offer you, but for some reason there's like these other books of the Bible or whatever religious texts that are being kept away. It's
Yeah.
like, well, why is that?
And as far as the Jesus story goes, I look at it as the story. I have no idea if this is historically correct, but I look at it as the man Jesus became Christ to help man. Like, it's almost like that, and they write the story as he was like ordained prophecy. That's the other part I'm talking about, where when you were talking about like creating yourself, like you're already that thing. That's where I can pull that into the Christ story.
Well, are you unless you unveiled it until?
No, you already are. You already are.
Yeah.
The you, I'm not saying ego you, I'm saying you as a whole is already that thing. But you're also creating it simultaneously. It's very out there. It's like you're walking a path, but you're the one throwing the bricks out as you're doing it.
I see what you're saying here. It's just a little odd to say it is already.
It's already there.
When the person who's supposed to experience it isn't aware of it yet.
It's like
So. Just say you lose.
It's like, remember I said about the color, like a whole color spectrum
I
in
got
front
you.
of you?
I got you. Yeah.
And it's like, well, what's my favorite color? Right? You haven't created you yet.
I understand.
You start going through each color, you're
Yeah.
throwing them away.
Yeah.
You're like, no, not this, not this, not
I got
this,
you.
not this. Oh, it's this one.
Yeah.
The you part was already there, already like
I hear you. Yeah. All right.
Just saying. Jesus quoted the 82nd Psalm and called everyone gods. He knew the divine potential in him is a potential within us all.
And then they killed him.
Yes.
By that I mean silly people. That doesn't really mean like, oh, he means the Jew. I mean, it was like silly people probably threw shit at him. It's like,
Yeah.
just people, silly, ignorant people.
Whatever.
To be honest with you, if he was here today, it'd probably happen again. Something shitty would happen again.
And there's numerous examples of this, of him thinking that way. Whatever I can do, you can do it more. If you split a piece of wood, God is there. So it's like, why are you building a church? Like, you just
Yeah.
pick up a piece of wood randomly. Like, oh, God's there too.
Yeah. Why are you building a church? Yeah.
Well, I think that was the point.
Oh yeah.
If God's in the sky, the birds beat you there. That type of shit. Yeah. Agreed. Alright.
It was tough.
Judaic point of view with everything that you say, because for me it's about accepting responsibility for my own sins on myself, and I don't have the ability to say that there is the suffering servant, the suffering Lamb of God, who sacrificed himself to relieve me of my sins, and therefore give me a fair shot at life.
Yeah, well, okay, that's a really good objection, I think, and I think that there's a...
He's being too nice.
Yeah.
Like, dude, you could do that yourself. Like, if you understand what these, I would say what these... Here, I didn't even do any actual literal studying of these texts and the actual interpretations of it. I see like, let's say he gives me a quote. I could say, I think I can understand what this means, you know.
Yeah.
And that's that, you know.
I think
it's almost like someone who did some sort of I would say existential like digging within within themselves, and they can see this flowery language, and they can go, oh, okay, it's talking about you.
Yeah.
Not, well, he had to die for me. So that way, like, you know, all my sins are upon him, and then, you know, now the gate of heaven is open for all. It's like,
no.
Do you see how it's a little like extremely contradicting towards this?
Yeah.
You know,
I think Christ sacrificed Jesus in order to say, hey guys, this is possible. Which is why I say you can't give the death penalty, or you can't torture this guy, because it has a large impact on everyone and everything. That collective conscious I talk about, or collective unconscious, right? Now that, like, in that area, truth is everywhere. So it has to be in there too. So when Jesus becomes Jesus Christ, then it's like, okay, this is possible now. So all these guys saying, you know, you're sinful and you're going to hell and all that. Like, nope, this is possible right here. That's Jesus being sacrificed. Jesus, the person who would have been playing video games and whatever, he's like, that's got to die so that I can strictly speak about this important thing. And that's the Christ taking over for Jesus.
and then the resurrection.
Like, see, I can't die. This part can't die.
Isn't this funny? We're in Antarctica in somebody else's basement, you know, and then there's the Pope. I have the answers most likely, and everyone's like, I know. It's like, ugh. And everything you're wearing right now could feed a fucking village and more, probably. But
they don't even look at the simple metaphor of it.
Well, like I said,
like, you know, sacrificing,
walking on water.
Yeah.
Come on. All right.
Yeah, continue.
Yeah. Fair bit of confusion about that in the Christian community, for example. So I would say that perspective is more explicitly Protestant, and then I would put the Catholics next to that, but then I would put the Orthodox types fairly...
This is Peterson trying to basically cleaning up what Shapiro's saying, I think.
He's maybe being a little too nice
He's like,
about it.
Yeah, that's like this sect of the church, and then there's this section of Christianity.
I want him to be like a little snippy, like he was with that woman. You know what I mean?
Well, he was in kill mode from the
I don't give a shit.
jump.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Like, well,
that's Helen Thomas.
Helen
Thomas, I think.
Yeah, something like that.
Helen something interview.
Yeah.
For GQ.
Here's the thing, though. It's like,
Jordan Peterson.
if you say, well, they're friends, it's like if he's his friend, then he'll tell him, like, dude, you need to put on some deodorant. Like,
well, you do it off camera, though. That's probably where that should be
that's different, man.
Well, it's chooser's choice either way, but if it were me, I'd have some empathy about it. Like, listen, off camera, I'll tell you. All right.
Far away from that, which is why so many Orthodox Christians, I think, have been interested in what I'm saying, because their sense, and this is where my knowledge of Christian theology starts to run out, because like I'm not an expert, I'm, you know, in the doctrinal differences.
Right.
Their sense is that it's the imitation that's of primary importance. Now, it's a weird thing, because even in classical Christianity, you have, let's say Protestant Christianity, you have this idea that, well, Christ died to save us all from our sins, and so we're already redeemed. But that doesn't alleviate the moral burden, weirdly enough, because you'd think it should. So there's this paradox. And I think I think part of the reason for that, this is an extraordinarily complicated thing, but in the Brothers Karamazov, Christ comes back to earth.
Right.
And in Seville during the Spanish Inquisition, and so he's doing his miracles and raising people from the dead and like being all messianic. And the first thing that happens is the Inquisitor arrests him, throws him in prison, and then comes to visit him and basically says, look, the last thing we need after setting up this church for 2,000 years is you. You're a lot of trouble. You've put a moral burden on human beings that's too much for them to bear. And so what we've done is watered it down and put some intermediaries in place so that the moral demand that your example required doesn't just crush people into nothingness, right? So every ideal is a judge.
Right.
So then you have the ultimate...
That's funny. Listen, you're making people feel like shit, all right?
I think something like that would happen if Jesus floated down from the sky or whatever. People are like, oh, fuck, I really have been fucking up. It's like a instant shattering of the ego for a lot of people.
Can you imagine what these leaders would say? Like, oh, fuck. Oh, fuck. Oh, God. All these leaders of these corrupt countries and governments and the ones that are behind the scenes that no one ever really talks about. Can you imagine?
It'd be massive. And
it would,
I don't want to even focus on just government leaders. It'd be your neighbors. It'd be all over.
It would be the Monday Night Wars. That's what it'd be. Shit that it's 1995 in pro wrestling. Shit that you never would have guessed is happening right now. Like Sable's coming out with that weird shit on her chest, you know what I mean? Like the handprints. Fucking Steve Austin is beating up the boss. Hulk Hogan with the vitamins is now, coming out to Jimi Hendrix and shit. Like, what the fuck?
I think it would be mass silence. Because they want the normal blue collar guy wants to get up and like, look at you politicians, look what you did, Jesus is back. But they'd be like, Jesus would be like, what have you been doing?
Yeah.
And they're like,
No, it's man.
And they just be inside reflecting.
And then someone's gonna say,
I'll be outside whistling as I walk down the street. Guess food is free now.
Then he says, but it was already free at that one place that you always got it, right? Just getting it. And then you'd go, oh.
It's like, God damn it, Jesus.
He's like,
watch your language.
He's like, it's like he doesn't say anything. It's like, no. And then it all ends when someone says, we gotta kill him. And he's like, no, not again. He finds himself on a board or something.
All right. Kay says, no Cappadocian father, no early Christian mystic, no hesychast, ascetic, ever interpreted scripture literally. He interpreted scripture by symbol and analogy.
Which makes me think...
Or they interpreted it, yeah.
Partially meant to be.
I 100% think it was meant to be symbols.
Toasted?
They're still used in movies to this day.
Do you like Dave Rubin? I've heard him a couple times. He just seems like a silly dude. That's all I'm going to say.
I usually see him as a host. I think we watched him that one time where he crushes some college kid.
Yeah.
Which he really didn't.
No, he those
could be fans doing
he still looked silly. Yeah. That's... Tanya, yes, they did look at the history of the Bible. Through several councils of mystics, the Bible was disseminated into what it has become today. Literally hundreds of books have been left out. And I've heard historians say that. All right, press play. Hurry. Before Jesus comes. Press play.
Those are some of the earliest things I've looked into. Was like Gospel of Philip, Gospel of Thomas, Gospel of Mary Magdalene. I was like, just some random derpy fucking History Channel thing. I'm like, shit.
Scripture is not
There's
literal.
books left out? Fuck. So that just blew my mind for some reason.
Ideal. That's the ultimate judge. And from the Inquisitor's point of view, that judge was too much. It was too demanding. And so I think there's so the Inquisitor goes through all this argument and says, we're going to have to, get rid of you again because you're just too much to bear. Mm-hmm. And so Christ listens and doesn't say anything. And then just when the Inquisitor stands to leave, Christ kisses him on the lips, and the Inquisitor turns white in shock and then leaves, but he leaves the door open. And that's the brilliant ending of Dostoevsky's piece.
Grand Inquisitor, yeah.
Yeah, and what makes him such a genius, because he basically says something like, well, look, the Catholic Church did reduce the burden, and it is corrupt in the way that earthly organizations are likely to be corrupt. And it does allow an out, which is, well, you can put your sins on Christ, let's say, and that alleviates your moral burden, but it still keeps the damn door open.
Well, this is why I think it's really fascinating, having spent a lot of time with Christian theologians in the past couple of years writing this book, is that the original conceit, I think, when you talk with people who are Christian and Jewish and you have sort of interfaith conversations, the original one-sentence conceit and the difference between them is that what you hear from Jews is Judaism is acts-based and Christianity is faith-based. Christianity is about the acceptance of Christ. When you accept Christ, then you've accepted what you need to accept, and everything flows therefrom. Mm-hmm. And Judaism says it's not just about accepting God, it's all these mitzvot, right? There are all these commandments that you have to do, and these are what perfect you as a human being. It's the performance of these commandments, accepting God's sovereignty because he's the one who gave the commandments, but you actually have to act in the world, and if you don't act in the world, then you haven't fulfilled your responsibility in the world.
This could also be an argument.
I'd say you guys have been practicing the wrong way.
You got to pass the ball. You got a 1-2 step. You got to pass. You got to. You know what I mean? You got to juke him. Then you got to jump over this guy, and then you win.
Nah,
this isn't a playbook, dude. This isn't rules. You know.
You got to be able to.
You got to find it within.
Well, you got to be able to face anything, right? If you truly study your internal self, you'll see the infinite. Thus, you consider everything until you know it, obviously. But knowing is with creation, right? Creating is the knowing part. So, if there's something you don't create and you don't know, then you have to consider it as a possibility.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
So, just following strict rules that someone else made up is not going to help you in the overall scheme of things.
No.
They have to be principles you create. Yeah. That's your fucking
that's my
ball
problem.
Of sunlight you're holding in your hand, walking through the dark spaces of yourself.
And that's my problem when others try to impose it onto others. You know, these conditioned. It's basically like, listen, people, these laws we're following. It's not because we find them morally acceptable. It's because they're there.
Yeah.
And that's that. It's like, oh, okay.
Tanya says Scripture is not literal.
I already said that.
My bad.
Yeah, you lose. I'm the champion now. How do you
feel?
I
believe Jesus speaks in metaphor or parable.
Parable. I got criticized for that not too long ago.
Toasted Network. Do you think taxation is theft? Only if it's not willingly given. If it's taken and not given, then yeah, it's theft.
Yeah. What about the roads? What about the roads, Jordan? Well,
we'd volunteer money to have the roads built.
Or it's like, if you really want the roads built, they'll be built. Ooh.
Voluntarily.
No, we need whips. Get some motivation.
Why you could have, although I know you wouldn't be thrilled with them per se, you could have Jewish atheists in that they believe that it's just their actions here.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah.
So this is why Jews have had and I think most Christians believe this too. The idea of having a moral atheist is not really a difficult idea.
Yeah.
It's the idea of having a system built on atheism that's completely immoral and will fall apart almost immediately, and the idea of having a moral system built on atheism, if you examine your atheism closely enough, I think falls apart. I think that moral atheism is basically you separating your morality from your atheism and then ignoring your atheism in pursuit of the morality, which is, well, you can live fine that way, that's fine, but I don't think that that's psychologically sustainable if you actually examine the core of your ideas. But with that said, I think that Christianity, after its original millenarian viewpoint, when Christianity first came about, the idea of Christ on earth was that he had ushered in the Messianic era, because it was a new era, it was a new day, and then it turns out that people looked around and went, well, this looks a lot like the old day, right? Not that much has changed. And so what changed? What changed was our spiritual status. That was the new redefinition of the Messianic era, is that the what Christ had brought to earth was a new spirit, right? He brought a new spirit into the earth, and he cleansed people of their sins and given them a fresh shot at life, basically.
So I was correct. Like, whatever was said was meant to be a big pillar of ice was presented, and everyone has the picks, you know, and the hammers in their hands, and he just licked it. That's all he did. My tongue is stuck. Yeah. Go get the fire department.
Yeah, I think Jesus did more of an uncovering than a bringing forth type thing. Said, "Oh, this is possible now."
Well, it's
Or
already.
you know this is possible now.
See, it's already here. It's here for you. It's already here for you. See? Versus, no, he brought it to us. Stop. I didn't say that. It's already here for you. So why don't you guys become libertarian? I don't put political labels on myself.
Yeah.
I aim for the best possible outcome. That's that.
If libertarian's an actual thing, and we do all the principles of libertarianism, but don't actually call ourselves libertarians, would that make us libertarians?
Tanya.
So, who cares what you call yourself?
When you go beyond, you should. When you go beyond the Bible, you can clearly see the Bible was created by stories written from pantheism. Oh, was that the right? And pagan beliefs. But the timeline is there. The stories are congruent worldwide. I'll have to look into that. It sounds very interesting.
I would agree. I'm not so sure what pantheism is, but paganism, 100%. Right, the sun with the 12 apostles.
Oh, there's a lot of these religious. I'm gonna call them religious characters because I look at them as stories. And if they are people, actual people, it's still like a character. You know what I mean?
But it's
very
seems
very
like
similar.
a lot of astrology in there.
Well, yeah, a lot of similar specific examples. How like the religious figure, the 12 disciples. How the sun is being used or portrayed.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I'm going off the top of my head. I don't exactly remember, so I don't want to be like attacked or anything. But it is very interesting the similarities between these groups, these stories.
Yeah, Jesus being born basically right after the solstice.
It was nice.
When the sun comes back.
Yeah.
Starts moving towards its
I
highest
remember.
peak. Yeah. And you have Samson with his hair.
Yeah.
When his hair gets cut, it's like the sun
loses his strength and power.
When the sun's rays go away in winter, it's like the hair being cut.
Mm-hmm. One of my favorite politicians, Ron Paul.
I like Ron Paul.
He's okay. I don't know if I trust him. Meaning, hey dude, when it gets hot, when the fire starts coming up, like what are you gonna do? That's what I want to know. Do you like the progressive voice?
We were watching some of his videos, and
He seems like a team player.
A little bit. Seems to just stick in the political lane. Not much outside of that.
No.
So, if I wanted to hear like a critique of Ben Shapiro or someone like that, I wouldn't go to him. I'd go to someone else. I don't know.
I wouldn't recommend him, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Based off the fact that, as far as he's Hillary, he talked about Hillary. He would recommend Hillary over somebody.
Over Trump.
Yeah. Well, it's like he's a virtually unknown, but it doesn't take much to fathom the idea. Okay, this guy might be corrupt. I mean, let's look at his history as a businessman. Who knows? Let's look at this.
Yeah.
This politician right here, over here, there's plenty of reason to believe that she is most likely extremely corrupt, and then all this shit comes out about her.
Yeah.
And then I hear him talk about it. It's like, dude, what? Are you like living in a vacuum? What are you doing?
Yeah. And we watched some of his stuff. If we were going to do a video, we'd have to find one that sticks out, because the rest is shit I've heard before. From, like Sam Cedar and David Pakman.
Yeah. So who knows if he's like copy-paste. I don't know.
So who knows if we do a video on him. All right, let's continue with this. Yeah.
And that in doing so, he changed the nature of how things work. Well, Judaism basically said, well, we never thought that nature changed in the first place, right? That's something different. And so, ironically enough, I think one of the sources of Christian anti-Semitism over time is an attempt to distinguish what makes Christianity different from Judaism other than Christ. Because Christianity and Judaism, in most of their main philosophies, have an awful lot in common. It's interesting. I just interviewed a fellow named John MacArthur, who's a major pastor, major Christian theologian. I interviewed him a couple of days ago for our Sunday special. And this came up. I asked him, so where do you think that...
He should interview Elaine Pagels. I would do that instead.
differences are between Christianity and Judaism. And he basically said, Jesus, right? That's the difference. Mm-hmm. And I think that that is the mostly honest answer, because when I hear Christian theologians try to distinguish Judaism from Christianity, what they say about Judaism I find to be not accurate as to what Judaism actually says. And when I hear Jews try to distinguish Christianity from Judaism, I think that, and I'm not saying they're the same thing, because they're not, obviously, they're different belief systems, but in terms of the underlying value system, the reason that we say Judeo-Christian value system is because in terms of the value system itself, the commonalities are overwhelming. They're overwhelming. The differences are mostly doctrinal and historical, and in terms of what you think God, I think that Christians read back in an Acts-based version of their own lives through a variety of mechanisms, whether they say, well, predestination exists, but in order to show that if I were really elect, I would be acting this way, right? That is an Acts-based version. It's just retroactive from the end. And so this is why if you say to a Christian, so you really believe that you can lead a terribly dissolute, awful, terrible life, but if you believe in Christ with the full fiber of your being, you're going to heaven? And they'll say, and many of them will say, yes, but then you say, but what makes a good person? And they'll say, right, not, but if, and what they'll always add, but if you believe in Christ, you wouldn't do all those things.
Well, that's...
Yeah. All right, if you're truly following the doctrine of Christ, it's like truly following it, then you wouldn't do the bad thing in the first place.
Honestly, I believe you take a step further and be following the path of, like, you know.
I'm not saying what I recommend. I'm just saying.
Don't run away from it.
Just the idea, just logically, the idea of it.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
I trust Alex Jones. Toasted says, I trust Alex Jones more than I trust TYT, especially after they go full conspiracy theory on how TMZ is lying about creepy porn lawyer. I leave progressive voices for sure a biased cunt and untalented. I probably have more talent than him.
And, I don't watch information to be, like, entertained by it.
No,
as far as ideas like that.
I think that's what Alex Jones is. He said.
But I'm talking about progressive voice. Just his ideas just sound lame.
Yeah,
they sound strictly political.
Yeah, it's like, dude, it's like, do you have a soul? What's going on?
When you watch Jimmy Dore, you can tell he like cares beyond just talking politics.
Yeah.
He's like, this is wrong.
Yeah, versus
these guys are assholes. I'm trying not to say that anymore, but they're assholes.
Yeah.
Like,
versus,
he does shit like that.
It's obviously logical. You need tax cuts here. It's not going to work. It's not economically correct. It's like, dude, like, what are you going to do? Like, if there's, like, a baby in the road, are you going to help try to save it, whatever the fuck? Well, listen, I mean, there's a lot of overpopulation in the world, and, we just don't need any more, like, get out. And I hope he's not like that.
Yeah.
Tanya says, they don't like it when I engage. Interesting. I'm back.
Oh, you got cut off or whatever.
YouTube. Agreed on the following Christ consciousness.
Yeah. Unless our show was lagging, was it? Continuing.
The thing, and that's why people are always criticizing me when I give an answer to the question that you just asked, because my answer has been, well, I act as if God exists. So, well, that's kind of weaselly. It's like, no, it's not, because it gets to the core of this. What do you mean by believe? Well, do you believe in Christ? Well, does that mean you utter the words that he existed? Well, that's a pretty shallow form of belief. In fact, I think that's no form of belief at all. In fact, it says in the New Testament, Christ himself says something along the lines of, not all those who utter the words, Lord, Lord, will be saved. Right, and Nietzsche's criticism of Christianity, doctrinal Christianity, was basically based on the idea that Christianity had taken the easy route out by insisting upon the statement of faith rather than the embodiment of the belief in action, which would be the imitation of Christ.
Which, by the way, is Jesus' original criticism of Judaism, right? Is that everybody takes the commandments extraordinarily seriously, but they don't take the spirit of the commandments seriously.
Yes, exactly. That's right. That's exactly right. It is the same. It's the same thing.
Maybe like you, Ben.
Yeah.
Like, isn't that interesting? He just says it, and it's like, yeah. Like, that's you, dude. That's you. I don't think people are meant to go to these temples or churches or whatever, and all like an hour or 3 hours a day. It's like, you have that. That's within. You can do that.
Yeah.
And to pray, you don't have to like literally get on your knees and hold your hands, whatever it's done. It's like it's not needed. It's really odd to me.
Well,
really odd.
What you have is a problem of almost like a yin yang type thing, where it's some people believe really heavily. Their chest fires up, their heart fires up, but the logic isn't with them. They're just ignoring the logic for the feeling of it. That's when they come off sounding like, oh, you're like a fundamentalist, and you have these atheist guys making fun of them.
Well, it's pure feeling, I would say, rather than... No, actually, yeah, it works, yeah.
And then you have the guys who leave feeling behind and bring pure logic.
Yeah.
They usually end up becoming atheists and saying, look how dumb this is. Two of each animal on a boat, blah, 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 blah. A guy sleeping in a whale's stomach. Come on, man. Blah, 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 blah. And they end up missing something. Then you have guys who stick to the logic, but also keep following the religion, and that's where Ben Shapiro falls into me. I think he sticks with the logic of conditioning.
Yeah.
Whatever his parents or rabbi told him.
Yeah.
He just figured that logically and just ran with it.
Sad. Tanya, we have our part in breaking this matrix. Remember, we choose this time. I would say we always had a choice.
Now, we chose this time as in...
Oh, my bad.
The people that are here now
My bad.
are the people that will
Gotcha.
fuck up the system.
Gotcha.
System failure.
Believe Cenk Uygur will eventually fire Jimmy Dore because Jimmy Dore is not a team player. If they fire him, he's just going to make his own little platform, and then that shit's going to grow. So
I think they'll keep Jimmy Dore because he's a large reason why people follow TYT still.
Yeah.
But they're going to, not have him on, main shows and things like that. Sort of nudge him to the side.
Yeah. Tanya, they use sin, guilt, shame, all these things to make sure
that we stayed.
My bad.
In
That
line.
we stayed in line. Does that make sense? Yes, it does.
Yeah, I would say of all that, look at those things: sin, guilt, shame. Why would those be a bad thing in a in a fundamentalist Christian context? Fear. You're afraid of going to hell, or God's going to punish you.
Allegedly,
You're
the
afraid of
idea of burning in hell was introduced not that long ago to make children fear, obedience. It was introduced, which is very creepy. Peterson, Matt Hunter Peterson seems to imply that I don't know how to say that word. Oh,
Nietzsche.
That word was empathetic towards Christianity, which would be.
Sorry.
You say it then.
Peterson seems to imply that Nietzsche was empathic towards Christianity, which would be a revolutionary take on Nietzsche.
I don't know.
I think he's the one who coined the term "God is dead," but I don't think he was saying it in a sense of "fuck religion." I think he was saying it in a different context.
Quite possibly.
I don't know though.
Tanya, that's the polarity. 3D versus 5D being.
Probably have something similar ideas to that. I put it in different terms though. Right, I don't go so far with classifying dimensions and shit like that.
The Matrix runs on fear, false evidence appearing real.
Yeah,
And more. It's fear.
If you attack the emotions, sometimes the logic can, short circuit.
Oh, sure. Yeah. If you're afraid of the dog and the dog doesn't want to be, Dogmas had nothing to do with you. What are you gonna? You might fucking throw that thing across the room.
And so, Nietzsche's criticism of Christianity was that there were very few real Christians because they didn't take on the burden of the action. And I would say the belief is actually manifested in the burden of the action. Now, you might want to be in a position, if you were a Christian, to say, well, my explicit statements of belief match what I act out, because maybe there'd be a unity in that. But the fundamental issue is what the belief is manifested in what you do, because that's what you state. For me, belief is what you stake your life on. That's belief. Right. And you stake your life on what you act out. And so you're trying to act out the idea that, I think that you take on the suffering of the world and the malevolence of the world as your responsibility.
I would say knowing is the thing that is the thing you're willing to go for. Right?
Yeah.
Right, you could say I have a belief or whatever, belief in good. Well, that has to turn into knowing at some point in order to pursue it, really.
Yeah.
And you'll have your real thing there to pursue it. Right? You're like, oh, I have this. I don't know if everyone else has it, but I have it. And there's your thing to pursue. It's a knowing. I know I have this. Rather than I believe I have this. Or whatever the pursuit is. Or idea. Really want to be on your stream, guys.
Oh, well, you skipped Matt Hunter.
I read that. Did I? Oh, okay.
Yeah. Me and Matt don't like that when you try to skip his comments.
Nietzsche was critical of Christianity because Jesus celebrated the poor, the sick, the weak. When according to Nietzsche, the strong, the healthy should be celebrated.
Doesn't sound like Jesus is celebrating the poor, the sick, the weak, and I don't like celebrating the. Well, it's tough. I have to know what's going on here. I have to know exactly what that means.
Nietzsche might have celebrated good behavior over bad behavior. Maybe.
Yeah. So maybe that means the strong, the healthy. Maybe that rather than.
I don't know though.
Look at that wealthy aristocrat over there. We should celebrate him, even though he's an asshole to the people. Look at him. I said, look. Look at his golden wheels and.
But I don't think Jesus celebrated the poor, the sick, the weak.
No.
He helped them. I think that was his point.
Yeah. Toasted.
Also, they could have been metaphors themselves.
Yeah. Toasted. Really want to be on your stream. You guys are the word of mouth, let's say on YouTube. But my roommate is using the computer with the mic. Dude, just kill him. It's very simple. Take a blunt object, hit him in the head with it, and take the mic.
You went with the 90s term. You're the bomb.
Yeah, I know.
Yo, that's fat. With a PH.
You're objectifying me now. Tanya, semantics equals constructs. Would these be T-drops? T-drops. Well, down the rabbit hole we go. Jesus lived service to others.
Yeah. In a way, he's just helping himself. Which is why it might have turned into metaphor.
Sure.
Right.
What's really fascinating is I think that what this comes down to, a lot of this debate comes down to from which end you're teaching. I think that it's almost two sides of one coin. And if you're talking to a bunch of people who are not religious, who don't believe in the Bible, right? You're talking to an adult who looks at the Bible and says, I don't believe all of these ridiculous miracles happen. Why should I bother engaging? Why should I believe all this stuff? And my argument has always been because you do believe all this stuff, you're just pretending that you don't, in the sense that you don't care about the historical circumstance, but all the things that you're acting out in daily life. I said this to Sam, right, on stage, is that, you and I hold 95% of the same values. Where do you think those came from? And Sam said, well, I've done a lot of studying, a lot of reading, but that doesn't explain why you and I hold 95% of the same values, because I haven't done any of those things, right? I didn't spend any time studying the philosophies of the East. Really? The reason we hold 90...
Just pull the fire alarm, okay? He'll run out. All right. Press play.
5% the same values because you grew up in a Judeo-Christian civilization with 3,000 years of common history. That's why we share the same value system.
You didn't eat mushrooms on a river in Brazil?
Exactly. And somehow we end up in pretty much the same place about what we think is actually important in life and which liberties are important and all this stuff. And we have disagreements around the edges. But this is
just, I think that's a poor response and answer by Shapiro. Like, trading content for, like, he's saying, well, Sam Harris, how'd you get all these values? Right? You did whatever experiences. You took mushrooms and sat on a mountain. I studied this book, but we came to the same values somehow. And he's like, oh, it's because whatever 1,000 years ago, someone wrote this biblical or Torah or whatever.
That's bull.
Yeah, that is
It's a load of bull.
Like, you get to the same values because you are experiencing something similar. It's just things, you're just adding content to it. Things like empathy, which are ingrained, happiness, sadness, anger, these things are ingrained. So if one person gets angry at stop signs and another gets angry at green lights, you're still sharing the anger part, which could allow you to reach the same values. Like, oh, you're angry and I'm angry. I understand that.
She said, holy crap, 1,000 miles an hour. I don't know if that's just the way he talks, but I'm a little like, hey, dude, do you talk like that because you want to be smart? Like, you're trying to sound smart, you know? I don't know.
It might be natural.
It might be.
And
who knows?
Yeah, I care more about, like, what he's saying.
Yeah.
And it's usually something I'm like,
Like, not that smart.
That's amateurish.
Yeah.
All right.
Look at his shoes. He's ready to run.
It's the West, right? The West is different. It is not the same as other philosophies. And so when I'm talking to people about that, the case that I'm making is you are part of this great river of history. You can pretend you're not part of that great river. You can pretend you're not living off the fumes of that river. You are living. You can pretend that the gas tank is running on its own. It ain't. Okay. There's a deposit of fuel, and you are still living off that. But that is a different thing than what you teach a child. And this is where I think that things become different, because I think that your philosophy, Jordan, is self-sustaining to a group of people who are looking at the values they live and saying, where did these come from and how do I justify these values? But I think that it would be very difficult to teach a child values before you teach.
Is this old?
It's like 6 days old.
Really?
Yeah.
I've heard this before.
I probably played it.
No. It's like a deja vu moment.
I needed to stop it for that.
Yes.
The myth. So I think that you're coming at people and saying to them, your values can be justified by the myth.
Yeah.
But when you're teaching a child values,
it's a myth.
You have
it's
to teach. You have to teach the kids the story first,
of course,
and then come the values.
Yes.
And so there's a difference between. And this is
they won't
why
even listen unless you teach the story
exactly.
first.
And this is why, as a religious person, I teach my kids the stories first because the values are embedded in the stories. And do I have questions about the stories? What rational person wouldn't have questions about the stories? Of course you have questions about the reality or the historicity of the stories. That doesn't undercut, number one, the importance of the stories, and number two, the point is that you have to believe the fundamental assumptions embedded in the stories, whether or in order for the values to
and that's exactly.
It's like your values don't have to come from myths and stories and stuff like that. They don't have to.
Don't step on his dreams like someone else. You know?
It can come from your own personal story if it had to. All right.
Tanya, he has a point. It's a part of the whole story.
Basically what I said.
Yeah, but you're mean. All right.
Why you said.
I've got a question about Judaism.
Okay, sure.
Okay, so one of the things that I've always wondered about is, I think one of the things that distinguishes Christianity from Judaism is that Judaism has an implicit emphasis on the salvation, on the salvific properties of the state. And I don't think you see that in Christianity to the same degree. So, I mean, because there's...
Can you explain that a little further? Yeah.
Well, there's the idea of Israel.
No,
that's part of it.
Yeah.
And there's the idea of the Jewish nation as a people, right? Whereas Christianity has this universalism that's built into it.
This is right.
Right, and so And
This is a fundamental.
I haven't heard.
So, and this is, I've never been able to have this conversation with anyone because it's an unbelievably dangerous conversation. But it seems to me that the advantage of Christianity is that it places the fundamental locale for salvation within the individual. I mean, independently of whether it's like pushed off for reasons of mercy onto Christ,
Right.
which is something else we didn't finish discussing, is one of Jung's points with regards to Christianity and Catholicism was that there was a merciful element to it because the burden that was placed on each person being the locus of redemption, let's say, was so heavy that it was unbearable.
Right.
And so that you needed an intermediary structure to like lift the load off you from time to time, which is what the Catholics do. It's like, well, here's all the ways that I've failed. That's okay. You're fallible. You're a fallible human being. You don't have to be crushed into absolute dust by the fact that you're not everything you should be. So, all right, but anyways.
I think that's where Jewish guilt kicks in, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, and it's also, I think, to some degree where Protestant guilt kicks in because the Catholics have that out.
Right.
And you can be cynical about that, right? Say, well, you sin your whole life and then on your deathbed you're converted. It's like, well, that's all nonsense because you actually have to repent. And so if you have a lifetime of sin, there's going to be a fair bit of hell associated. That's right. That's right. But you can see the mercy in that Catholic approach because it gives you like a reset in some sense, right? You get to be washed. The fact that you're not everything you could be is a terrible burden.
Right.
And if you're carrying that all the time, it can just crush you into nothing.
And obviously that's present in its earlier iteration in the sacrificial system in the temple among Jews, or among the. I mean, like I say, in 3 times a day, you say a portion in the Shemona Esrei, in the silent prayer, in which you repent your sins, and then we have a full day, right? Yom Kippur is deliberately designed to do that and to try and wipe the slate clean and give you a fresh start. But as far as the other question that you're asking about,
the state, the individual,
right? So to me, it's less about the state per se, because when you're talking about the nation of Israel, Am Yisrael in the actual biblical parlance, it's not talking about like a bordered state and corporate salvation within that. It's about the special responsibility of this group of people to spread light to the world, right? That you're supposed to be in the, again, Hebrew phrase, I'm using a lot of Hebrew today, but we're talking Bible, so we're okay. Is that you're supposed to be a mamlechet kohanim b'goy kadosh, meaning that you're supposed to be a nation of priests and a holy nation. And so that idea was expanded by Christianity to all of humanity corporately. That basically this applies equally to all humans. Now, what's interesting about Judaism is that Judaism actually has almost a 2-track approach. So if you are a Jew, then you have these responsibilities, these 613 mitzvot. You are not barred from the afterlife or from decency if you're not a Jew. So Judaism is only half exclusive in the sense that if you're a Jew, you're a Jew, and if you're not a Jew, we try to actually dissuade you from becoming one. But if you are outside the Jewish nation, you have a share in the afterlife so long as you fulfill 7 basic commandments, the commandments of Noah. Right, so there's a set of 7 commandments that were given to Noah. These are basic things. Don't steal, don't murder, don't commit adultery, don't eat the flesh of a living animal. You have to create courts of justice. These are like all very, very basic laws. And so what that means is that Judaism posits. Yoram Hazony is a really interesting philosopher from Israel. He has a new book out called The Case for Nationalism.
Oh, yeah,
and essentially, it's really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, the case that he makes is that the biblical Jewish view of where values should be embedded at the maximal level is a safer view than the universalist conception. Because the universalist conception that you have a set of values that applies equally to everyone across all times and cultures actually leads to tyranny and cram-downs. Meaning that his argument is that the threat of the 20th century was not a bunch of nationalisms that were embedding particular values. It was certain nationalisms that wanted to become universalisms. It was Germany wanting to be the Reich that ruled the entire world, or the USSR wanting to be a country that was able to apply communism across all times and all places. So a certain level of particularism in how we apply basic rules, the 7 laws of Noah in the biblical case, or the 10 commandments, you can have certain cultural differentiations, and that allows for group cohesion and in a way that you can't with the great mass of humanity.
Right. Well, that's the Tower of Babel problem, right?
Right.
So that was a lot.
USSR, they wanted to spread communism. I just think they're just a bunch of corrupt people who want power and land and shit, you know? Just like the United States government.
But, okay, so Jewish really means like a special class of practitioners of God's word or whatever.
Yeah.
And they follow more commandments than someone else.
It's like we try to dissuade people who aren't Jewish from becoming Jewish. It's like, what?
Yeah.
That was a little weird, you know?
And that'd be alright if it's like Fight Club style.
No.
Where you have to really like pursue it. You have to really be into it to do that.
That's persuading people against rather than, are you sure? You ready for this? Okay, come on.
Right.
The mountain's a long climb. It's like someone saying, like, I want to do this. I'm like, we'll find out. We'll fucking find out if you really want that. You're showing me you don't want it. You keep saying it, though. We'll find out. And then they're like, I'm done. It's alright, guess you didn't want it.
So, when does Jewish become a race? Clearly genetics plays
You know,
a role.
I really don't know. People use it gingerly, you know, that word. So it's something I'm going to have to study upon myself. But, it's a little weird how shit, you know, like right now, the issue of, like, the ethno-state, you know, so.
This would all make sense if it was, like, a class of learned people rather than, like, it's passed on through genetics.
Yeah, that's my problem.
Like, I'm Jewish, my wife's Jewish, that means my kid's Jewish.
You can't live here unless you're Jewish. It's like, what?
It's like they should be free to roam until they're like, I want to do this.
Yeah.
It's like a special class of people that do this certain thing.
Yeah. But again,
like a
shit gets silly when like you can't live here unless you're this.
Nah.
Like, yeah, it's dumb.
Okay.
Those are called colonies.
I don't know where we left off.
Well, there's the whole personal conversation. The breakdown of what a thought is. And then,
don't answer that, Matt Hunter, please.
Don't answer that? No. You saying Tanya, like, oh, my bad. Yeah, don't answer that, yeah.
Only if you feel like it.
Group cohesion? Is that how you say it?
Yeah.
Think 100 monkey principle. Judaism is not a race.
Yeah.
But it's
That's what I thought. But
I mean, I think that too, but what I would say is, when Matt Hunter says Jews are white, I don't know. Here's the thing: it's the way people use that word, you know. So it's a little weird. All right, let's finish this.
And Jesus was Jewish, right? He was like a Middle Easterner.
Yeah. Allegedly. I don't know.
Yeah. A lot of those guys were like from Europe, right? And they moved, as far as Israel, a lot of them from Europe and moved there after World War II. Right?
You gotta remember though.
The Jewish people were probably darker skin, like
I think
Middle Eastern looking.
Yeah.
So
at one point in time, I guess, and then over time, peoples spread. You know, a group of a certain group of people over here and over here and over here. You know, so
I guess it's like a faith that's passed on.
Possibly, yeah.
Somehow through genetics. Because Shapiro talks about, like, there's a lot of Jews that aren't practicing Judaism. So it's like...
Yeah, so it's weird.
So it's
see how he's using that word? So again, you know.
But if you expand the corpus
exactly right.
to be too large, then it starts to become too complex in its structure and too totalitarian.
Exactly.
Right?
So the Jewish critique of the universalistic principle would be, yes, there are certain fundamental universal principles that we should all hold by, and those we have to keep by Jews and non-Jews alike. But how those are iterated, they have to be iterated within a specific cultural structure. Otherwise, what you end up with is people trying to cram down cultural hallmarks of those structures on everybody else. And totalitarianism springs from the idea that I'm going to take my culture, which is different, not actually better, right? Like, we don't actually say that the 613 commandments are necessary for everyone. They're not necessary for people who are not Jewish. And to take that and say, okay, now everyone has to abide by those things would be a form of totalitarianism in a way that it is not when you say we have this particular set of values that is iterated to us in a particular way.
Okay, but maybe we could think about it this way. Maybe that would include both sides, is that there's a danger to claims of universalism, and that's that large-scale totalitarian utopianism. And maybe you could criticize the universalism of Christianity as contributing to that from a conceptual perspective. But maybe you could say the same thing about the concentration on the particular on the side of the of the Jewish emphasis on the state, and that because there are obviously pathologies of ethno-nationalism and localization that also manifest themselves as another kind of danger, right? It would be the danger of too much exclusion and the danger of not enough exclusion.
Right.
And so the issue is how you get the relationship between the individual and the particular... Correct, yeah. Well, this is one...
How dare you?
Well...
Should be...
Just get rid of that thing.
Yeah.
Fuck it.
I wanted to see the thing about the shoes. The cowboy boots, you know?
I mean, it sounds nice as far as I'm talking about that, and Peterson was kind of pressing him on it as far as like an ethno-nationalism type thing.
Not enough.
And
if you're gonna make a point, like, let's be very specific. Let's not try to be nice here, you know? It's an idea.
And Shapiro made claim to, you know, believe a certain way, but he doesn't seem to act that way. And if he hears a criticism of Israel, he jumps out the window.
Yeah, it's like, anti-Semites. You know,
it's like, anti-Semitic, and it wants to wipe all the Jews off the planet.
Yeah, it's like, what? No. if there's a tyrannical form of anything anywhere, you know, it should be criticized heavily.
Yeah.
Especially, like, you know, no matter what.
Yeah.
And if you look the other way just because it's your team, you know, or you envision that as a team and it's your team, then you it's like, all right, you're not ready.
No. All right.
That's a personal conversation between them.
No, I guess.
It kind of. All right. Well, I mean, yeah. It's like I wanted to hear be more specific, Peterson. If we're going to talk about like an ethno state, I'm like, I'd love to hear what Peterson thinks about that.
Yeah, me too.
Hey, dude, do you know this is happening? All these things are happening, and the past events of this is happening. Like your friend over here says this happened. Which, in reality, most likely, you know, these events took place in order to give a certain group of people, I would say, power in an area, and over time it's gradually building. And now we have these issues out here now.
Yeah.
You know, I don't mean to be vague. It's just, you know, a lot of terms I don't know. Matt Hunter, you guys heard of William Lane Craig?
Feels like I heard that name before. I haven't.
Same?
I'll look into it. Just make sure I jot it down real fast.
Tanya hasn't. Is an American racist and philosopher. No, I'm just kidding.
Have I seen this guy before? I believe he debated someone, I think. I have heard of him.
I'll look into it.
We'll look more into it. Maybe even do a video on it. But for now, I see another comment about it.
Matt Hunter, none of the renowned atheists, word I don't know, polemicists could beat him in a debate. Hitchens, Dawkins, Harris, he beat them all. We shall see.
Yeah, we'll give him a listen. Alright, guys, thanks for watching. Please subscribe if you feel like. Always comment. And give this video a thumbs down.